Jump on a BOGO. The BOGO Bo flexes out.
Never before have so many children and youth crowded into our classrooms.
Now all that's between you and your Coke is...
Kids today can access the whole world with just a tap. The internet and fast innovation have made amazing things possible. Some old things have been left behind because of these changes. There are many products and services from the past that we won't need anymore. That's usually a good thing. Who needs a typewriter when we have computers? But sometimes we feel a bit sad about losing things from the past. Some of those things were important parts of growing up. It's like saying goodbye to a piece of our childhood memories. Join us as we explore the 20 things from the 1960s that kids today will never understand.
The Philip Morris Company has bought all commercial time on the first half hour of all the network talk shows tonight.
Number 20. Cigarette advertising on TV and radio. For over 2 decades, cigarette commercials were a common sight on American TV until their prohibition in the 1970s. During this time, tobacco companies invested significant amounts of money in creating and broadcasting sophisticated ads, aiming to convince viewers that smoking was enjoyable, classy, and harmless. As awareness about the severe health risk of smoking grew, tobacco companies responded with misleading advertisements and confusing claims. Facing a decline in cigarette sales, advertisers fiercely competed to promote new filter brands. Despite this, TV commercials continued to avoid addressing health issues, leaving consumers uninformed about the true dangers of smoking. By the late 1960s, the established link between cigarettes and diseases prompted Congress to take the extraordinary step of banning cigarette commercials from the airwaves, effective in early 1971. In the present day, smoking is prohibited in most places, leading to a decline in smoking-related illnesses such as heart disease and lung cancer. As cigarette commercials vanished from TV in the 1970s, leaving a void in advertising, what messages filled the gap, particularly during children's programming?
I'm worried. I've heard reports that thousands of persons will be killed or injured on your highways this Christmas.
Number 19. Public service announcements during cartoons. In the 1960s in America, there were special messages called public service announcements shown during cartoons on TV. These were like short reminders with important messages for kids. One famous example was about preventing forest fires. It featured a character named Smokey Bear who said, "Only you can prevent forest fires." The goal was to teach children about taking care of the environment and being responsible. These messages were not just about selling things, but aimed to make kids think about being good citizens. The cartoons acted as a way to share important values and lessons with young viewers, encouraging them to be mindful of their actions and make positive choices. Number 18. Sunday drives as family entertainment. During the 1960s, gas prices were low, making it affordable for many families to own cars that were mass-produced on assembly lines. This accessibility to automobiles led to a surge in family road trips across the USA. The country was actively expanding its road infrastructure, creating miles of new highways. This era saw a rise in the popularity of the Sunday drive, a leisurely outing where families explored the countryside or other picturesque areas. Families also embarked on longer journeys to state parks or the shore for their vacations. An additional favorite pastime was attending drive-in theaters, where families could enjoy a cost-effective evening watching movies from the comfort of their cars. The combination of affordable gas, widespread access to cars, and the growing road network made family road trips and outings an integral part of American culture in the 1960s. Number 17. Phone numbers with named exchanges. Back in the old days, when people like us were younger, phone numbers didn't start with numbers, but with names. The first 2 letters of the name were like the first 2 digits on the phone dial. And this started in the 1930s and lasted until the 60s. Before that, they used 3 letters and 4 numbers without area codes or prefixes. These names not only gave you a number, but also told you which part of the city someone lived in. If you've ever wondered why phones have letters on the buttons, it's because of these old alphanumeric phone numbers. People needed to know which letters matched which numbers. In the 60s, the phone company switched to an all-number system, ditching the charming prefixes. A group in San Francisco, the Anti-Digit Dialing League, playfully protested this change, saying it dehumanized the phone system. They wanted to keep the fun names instead of just numbers. As we reminisce about the bygone era of named exchanges on phone numbers, one can't help but question the privacy implications. Yet, moving forward to explore the world of telephone party lines unveils a new layer of communal communication.
Where two parties share the line, generally only the bell of the called customer rings.
Number 16. Telephone party lines. Party lines were like a group chat for phones back in the day. Instead of each house having its own phone line, several houses shared one line. Each house had its special ring, so they knew when someone was calling for them. But here's the catch. Everyone on the party line could listen in on each other's chats. Imagine having a phone call and your neighbor listening in. It was like that. This made people worried about their privacy. These party lines were mainly found in countryside areas and small towns before everyone got their phone lines. They were popular around the middle of the 20th century, but as technology got better, individual phone lines became more common. So party lines faded away as people preferred having their private chats without the whole neighborhood tuning in. Number 15. Manual typewriter ribbons. Back in the 1960s in America, people used manual typewriters, and they had these things called typewriter ribbons. These ribbons were like ink for the typewriter. They helped put letters on the paper. But the tricky part was that these ribbons didn't last forever. You had to change them when they ran out. Imagine it like putting a new cartridge in your printer today. Now, changing these ribbons wasn't as simple as pressing a button. It could be messy. You had to be careful not to get ink on your fingers or clothes. It's so different from today's world, where we type on our clean computer keyboards. Back then, dealing with ribbons was just a part of using a typewriter. It's funny to think about how something as simple as changing ink ribbons was once a big deal before everything went digital. Number 14. Using maps and printed directions for navigation. In the days before everyone had Google Maps and other fancy digital maps, folks in the USA had to get creative to find their way around. Back in the 1960s and beyond, when technology was less high-tech, people relied on a bunch of methods to figure out where they were going. They'd unfold big paper maps, jot down directions from services like MapQuest, ask friendly locals for help, keep an eye out for physical landmarks, and pay attention to road signs. Some even had these special gadgets called GPS devices just for navigating. People were also pretty skilled at reading maps the old-fashioned way, using their knack for understanding and following maps to make sure they got where they wanted to go. Those were the days before everything was just a tap away on a screen. As people in the 1960s unfolded big paper maps and relied on creative navigation methods, they had another trick up their sleeves: carbon paper. Number 13. Carbon paper for copies. In the olden days, before photocopiers became a thing, people used a clever invention called carbon paper to make copies of their writings or typed documents. It was like magic paper. Here's how it worked. You'd have your original document and place a sheet of carbon paper underneath it, usually sandwiched between another blank sheet. When you wrote or typed on the top sheet, the carbon paper transferred the ink or impressions to the blank sheet below, creating an instant copy. It was like making a secret twin for your paper. People used carbon papers in offices, at home, and pretty much anywhere they needed copies. Even though it wasn't as quick or as easy as using a photocopier, carbon paper got the job done when you needed a copy of something important. It was a simple but clever way to make sure important documents were safely duplicated. Number 12. TV shows signing off at night. Back in the 1960s, when kids today weren't even a twinkle in their parents' eyes, something special happened on TV that they might never understand. At the end of a long day of shows, television stations would sign off for the night. That meant no more programs until the next day. Can you imagine that? Instead of endless streaming and shows all day and night, TV stations would play the national anthem or show a test pattern to let everyone know it was time to say goodnight. It was like a cozy little ritual to wind down the day. But nowadays, with 24/7 programming and endless streaming options, the idea of TV channels signing off at night seems like something from a whole different world. Number 11. Using encyclopedias for research. In the groovy 1960s, kids had a different way of getting info compared to today's tech-savvy youngsters. Back then, when they wanted to learn about things, they didn't have fancy online searches. Nope. They used these big books called encyclopedias. Picture thick sets of printed books, each packed with facts and info on all sorts of stuff. Need to know about the moon landing or the Beatles? Flip through the pages. Unlike the quick clicks of today, using encyclopedias took time and patience. Kids would search for what they needed, scanning through pages until they found the right article. It was a hands-on adventure in learning, not just a speedy click away. As kids in the 1960s flipped through encyclopedias for info, they relied on patience. But what about crunching numbers in offices? Did adding machines with paper rolls demand the same patience? Number 10. Adding machines with paper rolls. Back in the 1960s, offices used adding machines with paper rolls for calculations. These machines were like big, clunky calculators, but they didn't have any fancy sirens or the ability to save your work like computers do today. Instead, they had a paper roll where all the numbers and calculations would show up as you pressed the buttons. You'd have to keep track of your math on this long strip of paper, kind of like a never-ending receipt. If you made a mistake, there was no delete button. You had to start all over again. Kids today might find it hard to imagine doing math without a digital screen to help, but back then, these adding machines were the best tools available for number crunching in the office.
You're looking at the world's most popular soft drink with the new aluminum pull-open top.
Number 9. Pull-tab soda cans. In the early 1960s, soda cans had a different kind of top called pull tabs. These tabs were easy to open, but they caused a big littering problem. The whole tab would come off the can, and people just dropped it on the ground. This made a lot of mess everywhere. People would toss these pull tabs on the streets, in parks, and even on beaches. It became a big issue because these tabs didn't stay connected to the can like today's pop tops do. Eventually, people started to realize how bad this was for the environment, and they came up with a new design for soda cans. This new design kept the tabs attached to the cans, which helped cut down on littering. So now, when you open up a soda can, you can thank those who thought of a better way to keep our planet clean.
Never before have so many children and youth crowded into our classrooms.
Number 8. Film strip projectors in schools. Back in the 1960s, schools used film strip projectors as a nifty tool for teaching. These projectors were a bit like early movie projectors, but simpler. The film strip itself was a long, narrow strip of images, and the projector would display these images on a screen for students to see. Each frame on the film strip contained a picture related to the lesson, and sometimes there were captions or text to explain things. The teacher would manually advance the film strip frame by frame, explaining the content as they went along. It was a slower process compared to today's digital presentations, but back then it was cutting-edge technology. These film strips covered a wide range of subjects, from history to science, and they were a common sight in classrooms. As the film strip projector clicks to a stop, unveiling the bygone era of classroom technology, our attention shifts. But what about the milkman's daily deliveries? What timeless traditions awaited in the quiet routines of suburban doorsteps? Number 7. The milkman's daily delivery. One common sight in neighborhoods across the country was the milkman making daily deliveries. This service involved bringing fresh milk right to people's doorsteps in sturdy glass bottles. The milkman's routine was like clockwork, ensuring families woke up to find their milk waiting for them. The bottles were often left in a designated spot, like a milk box, to keep them chilled until residents retrieved them. This daily tradition provided households with a convenient and reliable source of fresh dairy, eliminating the need for regular trips to the store. Families could count on the milkman for their daily supply of milk, and the glass bottles were not only eco-friendly, but also reusable. While this charming service has mostly disappeared in the modern era, memories of the milkman's daily deliveries remain a nostalgic reminder of a simpler time when a wholesome staple was delivered right to your doorstep. Number 6. Writing letters as a primary communication. Writing letters was a common and important way for people to communicate. Unlike today, where we can instantly send messages with a tap on our phones, people back then would sit down with pen and paper to express their thoughts and feelings. This practice was prevalent, especially among the youth of that era. It was not just a means of conveying information, it was a heartfelt and personal way to connect with friends and family. To write a letter, one needed stationery, envelopes, and postage stamps. People would carefully choose their words, and the process of writing, addressing, and sending a letter required time and effort. Waiting for a reply added an element of anticipation to the communication. Letters allow individuals to share experiences, express emotions, and maintain relationships over long distances. In the 1960s, the art of letter writing played a significant role in fostering connections and preserving memories, making it a cherished and meaningful practice in communication.
Almost like playing two different tunes on the same violin at the same time.
Number 5. Playing records at different speeds. Back in the 1960s, playing records was a whole different ballgame. You see, record players had this cool feature where you could change the speed to match the kind of record you wanted to play. Records came in 3 speeds, 33, 45, and 78 revolutions per minute. Each speed was like a secret code, telling the record player how fast to spin the record. The 33 RPM was for regular albums, the 45 RPM was for singles with hit songs, and the 78 RPM was for those really old-school records. To make sure the music sounded just right, you had to pick the right speed. It was like a DJ secret trick. So, if you wanted to groove to your favorite tunes, you'd spin that record at just the right speed, and voila! The music would fill the room in all its glory. As the record spun at just the right speed, filling the room with nostalgic tunes, we couldn't help but wonder about another relic of the 1960s, the soda fountains. Number 4. Soda fountains as social hubs. In the 1960s, soda fountains were more than just places to grab a fizzy drink. They were bustling social hubs where friends gathered and stories were shared. These quaint spots, usually found in drugstores or diners, had a special charm. Picture a long counter with shiny stools, and behind it, a soda jerk crafting sodas with precision. The soda fountain offered a variety of flavored syrups, and you could customize your drink just the way you liked it, cherry, vanilla, or a mix of both. Beyond the refreshing beverages, these soda fountains became cherished meeting spots. Friends would catch up, couples would share a sundae, and the community would bond over shared experiences. However, as time rolled on, the popularity of soda fountains waned, making way for the rise of coffee shops and fast food chains, which now serve as modern gathering places. Despite the shift, the nostalgic aura of those 1960s soda fountains remains a sweet memory of a bygone era. Number 3. Using a hose to wash the driveway. Back in the 1960s, cleaning driveways with water hoses was a common practice that many people followed without giving it a second thought. Back then, it was routine to grab a hose, turn on the water, and spray away the dirt and grime from the driveway. This method seemed like a simple and effective way to maintain a clean outdoor space. This process usually involved using a strong stream of water to wash away debris, leaves, and stains. It was a straightforward approach that many homeowners adopted without considering the environmental impact. However, as times have changed, so has our understanding of water conservation. The casual use of hoses to wash driveways is now often discouraged due to concerns about wasting water. In the present day, there's a greater awareness of the need to conserve water resources and alternative methods, such as using brooms or electric pressure washers. They're encouraged to clean driveways more efficiently while minimizing water usage. And number 2 is collecting green stamps. In the 60s, there was this interesting hobby called collecting green stamps. It wasn't about postage stamps with pictures of famous people or places, but rather the special stamps you could get while shopping. The idea was pretty unique, especially considering how we're all into digital rewards these days. Here's how it worked. When people went shopping, certain stores would give them these green stamps as a bonus for making a purchase. These weren't just any stamps. They were like currency. You'd collect these stamps and then trade them in for all sorts of goodies. It was a bit like saving up points in today's digital rewards programs, but with tangible stamps, you could hold them in your hands. People would keep these stamps in booklets, carefully arranging and counting them until they had enough to exchange for household items, appliances, or even furniture. It was a quirky and tangible way to turn your shopping into a little adventure, all while getting something extra in return. Green stamps filled wallets in the 60s, transforming shopping into a tangible adventure. But what about the simple yet thrilling joy of mastering a pogo stick in the same era? Let's find out.
The big stick is here. It's the Hop Rod, the world's first.
Number 1. The pogo stick as a popular toy. The pogo stick was all the rage as a popular toy, captivating the imaginations of kids across the block in the 1960s. Unlike the high-tech toys of today, the pogo stick may seem simple, but it brought heaps of joy to children back then. The magic happened with a strong metal pole, a footrest, and a spring at the bottom. Kids would hop on, gripping the handles tightly, and then bounce up and down with glee. What made it exciting was the challenge of mastering the rhythm and balance required to keep bouncing without taking a tumble. It wasn't just a toy, it was a skill to be honed. Kids would spend hours outside, practicing their pogo stick moves and trying to outdo each other with higher jumps and fancier tricks. It was a cherished part of the childhood experience, reminding us that fun didn't always come with screens and buttons.